everyone knew they were going to be okay.
I'll say one more thing too. What you're saying about how you perceive Joe to be a bit of a dick. And it's, of course you're right to feel that way, but what I like about the way he speaks and his vernacular and the way he carries himself is, you know where you stand with him right away, for better or for worse, and you take to however it is, you always know where you stand with him, and I respect that, because he's not hiding behind passive-aggressive bullshit, or like, in games, he's just going to tell you how it is, or how he thinks it is. And I respect that, because there's a lot of bullshit.
Yeah, no joke, I came when I heard, I was given advance warning this was going to happen, and that was a game changer. That was the moment when I realized I'm doing this.
But look at everybody that came into Marvel after Joe. I think that speaks volumes to who Joe is, to Joe's character.
Yeah, people who stayed.
Exactly.
He let us unleash our Rolodexes on the Marvel Universe, which is what was promised. So I wasn't sold a false bill of goods by him. And honestly, I wouldn't be there without it.
You want to go?
Sure, I'll go. Yeah, we'll save the best for last. So I have a sort of weird path into comics. I can't really write or draw worth anything, so I never thought I'd be in comics. I'm going to pander to the home crowd. I grew up in Markham, just outside of Toronto.
Yeah!
And so I actually thought I was going to be, seriously, Prime Minister of Canada. In seventh grade, I was reading every political autobiography you can. I thought Pierre Trudeau was the greatest person ever, affairs and all, and I was like, I'm going to be Prime Minister. I'm going to be the first minority leader in North American history. I'm going to make sure women have equal rights. I had this whole manifesto laid out in grade 6. And I was like, and it was ridiculous when I look back at it, but I was convinced I was going to do that until I got really lazy. And I moved to the U.S., and I admit that may be related, after high school. And so I actually got a scholarship to the University of Minnesota, and I went there to business school for literally a day. And God bless my parents, when I dropped out of university after one day, they were okay with it. Because I said, I don't want
one day, this is orientation.
literally, I skipped orientation. I was like, I sat in 4 classes, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I was I'm not saying one day, that's a little...
One day?
Yeah, literally one day I was like...
Listen, after 4.5 hours of sitting silently and contemplating...
A long 4.5 hours.
Up yours, college.
Stop it!
Maple fist out.
I will never work in business. I have no interest. Why would I want to do it? I'm like, you know what I want to do? I always want to be in the military. My family, all in India, we're all in the military. And I'm like, I want to be in the military. So, since I could not legally earn money for the first year I moved to the States, I worked at a local comic shop for store credit every Wednesday for 4 years. I just kept doing it because I got to read comics and then basically get them free. Once I could start working, I ended up working at retail chains a lot, selling clothes, customer service. I spent about 3 or 4 years doing loss prevention and fraud investigation, and all during that time I was working for different comic book websites. Did some very terrible interviews with people like Matt and Stevie, and after some time I realized I'm going to go into the military because this is what I want to do. I was really gung-ho, and unfortunately was medically disqualified. So I said, okay, you know what I should do? Maybe I was a bit hasty about college. Let me go back to college. And I'm like, I'm going to be a cop because I really like arresting people. And so then after 6 months of class, I realized, I'm being kicked out of my criminal justice class twice. I realized maybe this isn't for me. So I'm like, I'll be a doctor. So next semester I said I would be a doctor, and I became an EMT, and I loved it, and it was great. And then my second year of college started, and I have a really weird medical history. I was really sick. I said, you know what? By the time I get back to college, it's going to be another semester. Let me just relax. I've been in and out of the hospital for about a month and a half, 2 months. And so I visited my brother in New York, and I just was like, you know what? Let me come by Marvel. I'd always talked to the guys here, been nice, but I grew up a big DC fan. So I knew Jim McCann, who used to work in Marvel, and so he brought me around and introduced me to people, and I met David Gabriel, who was the VP of sales at the time, and he's like, oh, I know you. Do you want a job? I said, okay. Coming on Monday. Literally, I'm on vacation for like a few weeks in New York. He says, just come on Monday, let's do an interview. And we ended up talking, and I was hired. And I say that because I sound eminently unqualified for that job. I was hired to do marketing and PR, and I'm not sure I had a ton of great experience for it, but I think I'd argue what David saw in me is that, I had experience, writing on the side, promoting comics through various websites, and you don't get paid a lot doing that. And B, I also had, I think something Matt talked about and Axel talked about, a lot of life experience. I mean, I have worked everywhere from McDonald's to retail, to video stores, to cleaning the trash, to, you know, shoveling drives when I was 22, even just to pay the bills, 'cause I needed to pay the bills somehow, to working in a comic store. I used to work 3 or 4 jobs at one time. That was the easiest way to pay the bills and keep myself from not being bored. And so, you know, coming to Marvel, I never thought I'd work in comics, but I'm here 4.5 years later, and it's and I think actually what's helped me the most of it, if I can go and say it, is that I didn't want to go into comics, or I wasn't solely focused on going into comics. I wanted to live the life. I traveled, you know. For a span of like a month and a half, I was never at home. I went to Japan, then I went to London, then I came back to Toronto, and I was just traveling around. And I think stuff like that, actually, if you can afford to do it, it's great to just live life, because when you come to comics, if all you've ever known is comics, it's also going to be a lot harder to build those relationships. Like if I was talking to Matt this week, and we weren't talking about comics, we were talking about baseball. You know, if I talk to Axel, we might talk about basketball or football. If I talk to CB, we're going to talk about food. You know, it's you're going to talk to everybody, and it helps if you're doing on the business side of things, to know things other than just comics, sports, you know, cultural events, food, all that. It's a great way to make connections and to, you know, to just connect with people. But yeah, that's my story. I don't know how I was qualified. All the interns I hire hate me because they're going through college and I didn't. But you know, if you work hard and you live a little bit of life, you'll do very well in comics.
So yeah, my story's pretty quick. I'll just run through it. I grew up a Marvel reader from when I was a kid, burning Claremont X-Men straight on through. High school, kept reading. And when I got to college, got to work in a comic book store. A lot of people work in comic book stores and retail. And I was working for half credit, half cash, so I didn't have to do all
I
credit.
earned $7 American an hour in store credit.
And but all during that time as well, I was a big manga fan. So I was a Marvel zombie, reading all that stuff, read a lot of DC, but I was big into manga. And back in the early 80s when it started coming over straight on through, I'd get my hands on whatever I could find. And I knew from back then that I wanted to study Japanese. So I was in college, I was a Japanese studies major. Did my junior year abroad in Japan. Learned a lot about the culture, about the language, about the manga industry over there. Just self-taught myself, learning and just figuring out what the publishers were, what was going on. Came back, graduated with a degree in Japanese studies, and then moved back to Japan. I went back as an English teacher because that was the easiest way to get a visa. I was on a program called the JET program, the Japanese English Teacher Program. And during that time, while I was teaching during the day, at nights I would just do my best to try to get into the manga industry, go and meet with writers and artists who I heard lived in the area, made a couple connections, and everything grew from there. So I got to know a lot of people in Japan. Right before the big manga anime boom hit here, in '96, I moved back and I worked for a company called Central Park Media. At the time, they were known for a lot of their adult anime, like Hirotsuka Doji, Legend of the Overfiend, and La Blue Girl.
Oh.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
It had
but they wanted to launch a manga division. Hey.
We're going to welcome Mark Brooks to the panel, guys. Mark Brooks, everyone.
Sorry I'm late.
It's all right.
We're just telling how we're breaking in stories, how we broke in. So let me finish up.
CB was just on the Overfiend.
Yes. But so they, helped launch CPM Manga. It was a company then. We were doing like Record of Lotus War, Slayers, a bunch of different titles. And back then it was floppies. It wasn't like the graphic novels, like the straight to the $9.95 tankobon that you see now. We were still doing comic book size. Every month, put out a 32-page comic. And since I was a huge Marvel fan, my thing was like, I want to cross over Marvel and American mainstream superhero comics and manga. So I started hiring a lot of different American artists who had manga influence into their work. Kieran Grant, Ed McGuinness, Joe Madureira, Jeff Matsuda. A lot of these guys, I would have them do variant covers on my manga books. And through that way, I got to know a lot of the artists in the American comic book industry. I met Joe Quesada at a show, and I was talking to him. He's like, yeah, I do a cover. He's like, I'd love to do a cover. I think it would help sales. And he gave me his price. I was like, whoa, we can't afford that. This was like right at the peak of Ash, I think, at that point. But, we kept in touch. I got to know Jimmy Palmiotti really well at the time. Just from going out to shows and hanging out, schmoozing with people, going to bars, having drinks, talking comics, being professional, having had life experience, and, just becoming just friendly with everybody. It's really not about a lot of